Hi, it's Pastor Robin here with another in the series of highlights of messages from MCC Richmond. This from Sunday, October 24th. The title of that message was, Who is Righteous? And it's the first in a three-part series. I'm talking about righteousness and how we can achieve it for ourselves as individuals and in our community. And we focused on the gospel reading, a parable that Luke records in chapter 18, verses 9 to 14, in which Jesus tells the parable about a Pharisee who is very self-righteous and says, thank God I'm not like those other people, including that tax collector over there. And then the tax collector is indeed somebody who, while a tax collector and therefore seemingly a sinner, says, God, have mercy upon me, a sinner. And Jesus reflects on this and says, He's the one who's righteous. He's the one who's justified because he recognizes the humility that's required of us in our relationship with God. Humility isn't always something that we like to hear about, and certainly sin isn't something we like to talk about either, and yet there's plenty of sin and perhaps not enough humility to go around. I talked a little bit about how even when we make mistakes, even when we sin, and sin, by the way, is only falling short, it's become this thing that somehow always is horrible. And of course there are big sins, but there are many smaller sins that many of us commit all the time. And it really is about falling short. We're created in the image of God, and we're falling short of that image. That's really what it means. And so there's sin, but God doesn't stop loving us. God, there's no scarcity of God. Oftentimes the Pharisee, I believe, actually was operating on a scarcity model of God. He was counting on his own behavior, thinking God wouldn't save him, but he could save himself by following the rules and fasting and all the things that observant religious people in the temple were supposed to do. And that was somehow going to get him through, when the reality is we are saved by the grace of God, the mercy of God, which is never ending. It's always available to us. And we talk some about that in our service on Sunday. And if we are open to the mercy of God, why, God will just help us see, well, we made a mistake and we got to pick ourselves back up and move on because we get another chance. God is the God of another chance. I actually did a little demonstration. It kind of I thought I was clever, and oftentimes when you do demonstrations in church involving young people, you learn how smart they are. I brought some rocks back from our retreat from the past weekend at Bear Creek Lake State Park, and I gave them to one of our youth, a wonderful young man named Jazz. And I said, here, Jazz, and I kept giving him more rocks until I thought his hands would be full, and then I offered him a $10 bill. Well, he found a way to kind of get the rocks up here and still get his hand out to get the $10 bill, and that, of course, defeated the purpose of what I was wanting to do. And so I had to give him a few other things from the communion table, the various elements there, and so on and so forth, until finally his hands were so full that he could not possibly take the $10 bill. And then I said, so isn't this how it works for us? We get ourselves so full of ourselves, we get ourselves so wound up with all that we have that we don't have a hand open to receive what God has for us. We get our hearts full of anger and frustration and anxiety and so on and so forth. Or, and our lives get filled up with so much busyness that we have no time left for God. But God is constantly trying to give us more. And if we let go of the things that get in the way, we'll have plenty. We'll have plenty. And that's where righteousness comes from, recognizing that it is the grace of God, the bounty of God, the abundance of God, which knows no end, that is the source of our power and our lives. And we don't need anything else if we open ourselves to that. Well, that's the first part of this series on who is righteous. This coming Sunday, we're going to have a little story about Zacchaeus, among other things. Also a reading from a little-known book in the Bible called Habakkuk. And both of them together will help us understand something more about righteousness. I hope you might be able to join us there this Sunday for Who is Righteous Part 2. But if you're not, they'll be online at www.mccrichmond.org, as is the sermon from this past Sunday as well. And may you have, whether you can be with us or not, whether you can listen to the message or not, may you hear God in your life, and may you know that God has blessings for you. Open your hands and you will receive. Amen.